Hi. All right. If you saw my community post, I'm going to be talking about this video really quickly. This is very short notice on the whole thing because I was going to wait a week or two until this gentleman decided to post some really stupid accusation against me and a fellow Twitter individual who I will not be posting anything about because she does not deserve this kind of bullshit. Now, where I draw the line is yes, parents do have a right to discuss books that they find appropriate or inappropriate for their children. But here's the matter of discussion. Now, banned books is something I have been passionate about because my grandmother, who was a librarian at Oklahoma Central University, also taught me a lot about why banning books doesn't work. It never works. Now, I'm going to bring up this is not the manga that was used originally. This is rated teen, but um, there was a lady in another state outside of Colorado who wanted these books banned from her child's library. Well, what people didn't realize, it wasn't a school library, it was a public library. And the section that these books were in was the teen section. There's little to no nudity in this series. I will tell you this now because I've read these cover to cover. And the only time it's even brought up is when Kana and Toru go to take a bath. And it's not even vaguely, you can't even see anything. It's all fogged over. I'm sure that's a censorship choice that the company took, or it was just drawn that way. What matters is that there are books and there are materials that I read that are not considered bad for kids. Like, if, say, my friend's 11-year-old asked if they could read this series, the Flying Witch series, I wouldn't really have much of a problem with it because it is written for an audience for anybody. It doesn't have an age restriction on it. It is a series about a girl who is a witch who goes to live with her cousins and is in training to be by herself, much like Kiki and Kiki's Delivery Service. But in truth, there's a difference between a parent deciding what their child is going to read that's appropriate to what is not appropriate. Now, back when I was a child, my parents never really brought up the fact that there are books that are restricted. We knew about banned books because my grandmother talked about them. As I said, she was a librarian. She lived during a time where that kind of stuff was common. Now, my high school in Colorado, we had an open discussion on banned books. In fact, many of the times, the librarians at my school would probably put books that were restricted out for people to know what they look like, what they are. And we had a discussion with a teacher in one of my classes about one of the books that we were reading, which was a contested book, and it was one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Yeah, and I wouldn't really say that's a good one to show teenagers, but you know what? I had a teacher who basically gave me a list of books to read in my freshman year of high school, and it was a very large syllabus and a very long list. I mean, he had the Kool-Aid acid test on there. He had books from the 60s and 70s. I shocked him because I had read Watership Down, which was also listed on there. Um, Interview with the Vampire was also listed on there. I mean, he found out very fast. I read those books and absolutely loved them. One of the most contested books in my childhood also was one that I absolutely love was To Kill a Mockingbird. which, FYI, there's no mockingbird to kill, but trust me, it is a very big metaphor in that book, is that people were uncomfortable about the whole race issue. I read Huckleberry Finn. I've read Tom Sawyer. Yeah, it's the words. It's the way they're said and the dialect used. And honestly, I think that people need to understand that can be a bit of a drawback for people. I should know because I've read Redwall, all of them. And there are dialects in there. There is language usage and dialects that are completely off your friggin' wall. And I'm going to mention that there was a time when I was in Texas where, yes, Redwall was a contested book because of who. Also, I corrected my school librarian on how to pronounce the how to pronounce the gentleman's name. Let me grab this book because this is an old copy. It has a little bit of water damage because, again, it was in a box. See, it's old. I've had this since I was 8. So, yeah, Redwall has a lot of dialectual choices that would be kind of offensive to people. But again, books like this are common. I mean, we're looking at a lot of different issues when people come in and decide what a child should be able to read. I mean, my dad had to argue with a person at a comic book store. Sorry, I'm trying to fix something on my bed. Anyway, yeah, my dad got into an argument at a comic book store about nudity in Tenchi Muyo, which, by the way, there's really not much nudity unless you think taking a bath is supposed to be something. Yeah, I mean, come on. So, honestly, when I got accused of being a groomer, I was laughing my butt off because the guy probably does not know the definition of asexuality is. And I'm not about to give him the definition because he's probably going to go look it up on Google and it's probably going to show him pictures of plants. Something my sister actually took pictures of a long ass time ago when she was discussing asexuality with me and what it is. So, honestly, I'm just going to mention when people talk about book bannings and stuff, it just grinds my gears because some of the dumbest reasons to ban a book have been pretty damn stupid. I mean, Hello God, This is Margaret is not a bannable book. Yes, it talks about puberty in a very upfront kind of way that girls and boys can relate to. Harriet the Spy, too, discuss maturity levels and therapy and how it's not wrong to talk about things. And, well, it does. I don't condone spying. That is a bad idea. If you're a child watching my video, no, I don't condone spying, but I do condone that book. Please read it. It's worth it. But when people go around telling parents how to teach their kids, and these are parents that have already let their kids read Redwall or Hello God, This is Margaret, or some of the other books. The only books I have issue with are ones that I find kind of racially insensitive. Indian in the Cupboard being one of them. And Mouse on the Motorcycle is also kind of contested to me because I had teachers who just would plow it into my face. Yeah, I'm learning disabled, but I'm not stupid. I'm not going to read a stupid mouse book just because there's a movie of it. I'm not that. No. I mean, there's books that I've read that when I was a kid that surely I shouldn't have been reading. But I read them anyway because my parents let me. I read Michael End's Neverending Story. I read Momo. I read The Last Unicorn. I read all those books because guess what? I liked them. But I also understand that most kids that I met when I lived in Texas had never heard of those books because they weren't in our library. Hell, I was surprised we even had the Purdain books by Alexander Lloyd in there because that is full on fantasy. And my school looked down on fantasy novels and sci-fi novels like they were the plague. I mean, my British lit teacher, had barely enough to do Grendel and Brave New World because they were considered non-important literature at my school. They viewed science fiction and fantasy as non-important. Hell, they would have made us read Macbeth, Hamlet, and all those Shakespeare books in lieu of anything else, even if it was Midsummer's Night Dream, which is a fantasy, much more of a drunken fantasy if you ask me, but you had to be probably partially drunk to understand part of it. But that's them. But in the lieu of our country now, and the whole thing with DeSantos and his BS, the truth is, um, he can't stop a book from being sold in a bookstore. He can't stop a library from doing a discarded book sale, and those banned books are in the sale. He can't stop that. That's just not how it works. Now, banning a book, as my grandmother would put it, if let's say someone bans oh gosh, um Monkey, which is a version of Journey to the West, they would have to find some pretty damnable good reason in there to pretty much put that book in restriction. Considering the fact that Song Wukong does some pretty dumb stuff, including getting drunk off of peach juice, trying to beat up somebody, getting stuck under a mountain for 100 years, and other issues. Yeah. Or I'm going to also put in another book that probably would get people to look at me funny because honestly, these two books will probably get on the banned list because of certain aspects of it. The Haunting. The Haunting of Hill House. Um, I think should be required reading for most high schools, mostly because it deals with mental anxieties, things that kids do face, and it's also a work of really good literature. It's actually pretty damn good. It has a few things in it that are amazing. The Bloody Chamber, which was turned into a movie called In Company of Wolves. Angela Carter is an amazing author when it comes to actual horror and werewolf literature. I mean, before I read Carrie Vaughn's Kitty in the Midnight Hour series, no, I read The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. I absolutely will put my life on the line and say, hey, read this book. But in all, literature in this country right now is at an all-time low on what kids are going to be able to read. I mean, I read Redwall, I read all these great, amazing books, and now some of these kids can't even get access to them. I mean, The Crystal Cave, I read that when I was 11, and that's technically a children's book. The Dark is Rising sequence, a wonderful series, and it's also, again, many people can't get access to this. And then there's also, Aragon. I don't know if that's going to get banned. That would be horrifying to me if it got banned, because there's nothing really that offensive in it. There's no real alcohol drinking or anything weird. But when it comes to banned books, and it's a passion of mine, I don't want books to get banned because sometimes those books are the future for kids. It opens them up to other stories. And when people like DeSantos and all these other people go around saying, oh, these books are terrible and they're awful and they'll hurt people, it doesn't hurt anybody to read. I mean, as I said before, sure, you can restrict books at a school library or a public library, but it doesn't stop places like Barnes and Noble, Half Price Books, or any other bookseller from selling these books. Because they're selling the books for the author to make a profit. I don't know about these two authors because they're dead, but again, even Mary Stewart has written children's books. I mean, I would probably just say that is the best sum up of anything is Jill Murphy as well, who wrote the Worst Witch series, which is another series I absolutely adore more than Harry Potter. And trust me, if you're a Harry Potter fan, you need to read Jill Murphy, the Worst Witch series, because it gets much more interesting when you find out how overpowered Mildred does end up becoming when they realize she's actually not that bad of a witch. But that's like further down the line, like I think book 8 or something. I don't know. I don't remember how many books are in the series. But I will say it. Limiting a kid's access to books only will make them not want to read. And if your kid does not want to read, that's really bad because that means they've lost a part of that wonder that, I mean, I remember being a kid and my favorite thing to do was the summer reading program because it got me out of going to the Bible thing at my grandmother's church where I ended up actually getting really sick. Because some kids do not know the difference between hay fever and giving everyone a summer flu. Just putting it out there, that actually happened to me. That's why I never liked going to Bible camp. I never went back. My mother refused to send me back. But what I want people to get out of this discussion, and I want people to write down things for me in discussion, like, and whatever you want, I'm not gonna go into detail too much about it, is when you discuss books with people, sometimes people do not like it because you may have read something they've never even heard of, and they may actually resent you for it. I should know. I really should know because I had a friend who absolutely hated me because of this book. After I bought it at Barnes and Noble, she went ballistic at me because she couldn't find a copy of it at all at the Barnes and Noble near my house. because as soon as I posted that I got it, a bunch of people went and bought it. And I don't even have that much influence. I just told, "Hey, look what I found at the local bookstore." Woohoo! Because honestly, I had been hunting for this book for years since I checked it out of the library. So, whatever you do, don't discount the books, but also be aware that book bannings or book restrictions don't work. They actually make things worse. But here's the thing, and I pointed this out when I was reading Aragon, because I ended up buying the whole damn book series because guess what? Stupid me. I read a lot. But I liked the books so much, I had to buy more. And I ended up getting all 4 books and the mini book and the collection of stories and his sci-fi book, which, by the way, second book's coming out in May. Shameless plug. But until, and if you hear my ex in the background, he's saying woohoo for whatever reason, D&D thing. But anyway, I want people to know that book bans or book restrictions does not mean it affects any bookstores. Go buy books. Support the authors, support the fight by making sure kids do get the books that they like. My parents absolutely hated the fact I was a big Brian Jakes fans. My sister hated that, but she started liking it when she realized it was fun. Make sure kids read. It does not mean they have to read the books you want them to read. Okay? Because I can't read the books my mother gives me. I should know. I still have like a stack of them I have to give my mom back to my mother because, oh my god, some of them are so freaking boring. And her books are way too realistic. The only books I've kept are the ones that are about Buddhism and meditations. So, yeah. So, anyway, I wanted to talk about that picture and how silly it was because being accused of being a groomer and being asexual, as well as being an advocate for books and for the authors who put the books out, some of the authors I don't even like. I don't like Judy Blume, but I've read some of her books and they're really quite good. I do not like Beverly Cleary at all, but I've read some of her books. I've read the author who did A Wrinkle in Time. In fact, I've read all of the Wrinkle in Time books, and I will highly say this. I hated her. Because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't get into more science fiction and more questionable materials. I read Frank Herbert's Dune at 11. Mostly because that was the only book my grandmother would let me read at her house, other than The Man Who Fell to Earth, which that's a really good book. I need a new copy. Please help me find one that isn't an arm and a leg. So, yeah. Anyway, go look for books. Go hunt down any book you want that is banned or restricted. Make sure kids find out that there are adults out there that do want them to read, that do want them to read books that maybe make them question the reality that they're seeing. With that being said, reading is supposed to be fun. It took me that long to get that way, and I have this man to thank. I have Brian Jakes to thank. I mean, honestly, if I had a picture of the man, I'd probably post it on here and say, if it wasn't for Brian Jakes, I would not be advocating books like I am. If it wasn't for Angela Carter, same thing. Shirley Jackson, same thing. This Chihiro Ishizuka, same thing. I want kids to read. That is the biggest thing. My coworker at the store I work at, he knows I will advocate for his sons. And he knows I want them to read books. I want them to question the world around them. I mean, I don't care if they read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I want them to enjoy what they read and enjoy the world around them. So, with that in closing, read often, make sure your kids are reading, and make sure that you have a freaking library card. Or if you can't afford to go to the bookstore, discarded book sales at your library will sell books that are restricted. I should know. Used bookstores. Find them, keep them in your hearts, because sometimes those used bookstores are a lifesaver. Especially for ninth graders Especially for like, let's see, 6th through 12th grade, because sometimes your teachers will make you buy books because um, the school budget will not afford to get you the books you need. So, used bookstores, use them. Um, do not fret. Sometimes the prices at a used bookstore can go anywhere from up to about $7. It can go from like 50 cents to $7. So go for that. Support your local used bookstore. Support your local bookstores. Do what you can, and also sign petitions. Keep the libraries um, away from getting stuck with bans, because what bans uh, what's banned in the kids section will turn around and be banned in the adult section too. I mean, imagine having to go into a library and being told that Interview with a Vampire, which is in the adult section, is banned and is no longer going to be carried at that library. Think about that. So, in closing, read often, get a book. Summer reading's coming up. Have fun. I will discuss summer reading next time.